Cultural events reflect the zeitgeist of our age. They feed impressions into our minds. They influence our perceptions of beauty, of what is good, of what is true and what is proper. And most importantly, they impact our emotions, which can then impact our actions, which then influence our states of being. So it is very important to see cultural events in light of these various moving parts of how they relate to the human experience, which is why today we're talking about the most recent Superbowl halftime performance, which has been called by many critics the worst halftime show in the history of Super Bowl halftime shows, which, by the way, looking at past halftime shows, it's not a stretch to believe that these critics may be correct. But my critique, which I most certainly have one, is actually a little bit deeper than criticizing the performance or the choreography or Samuel L. Jackson dressed up as Uncle Sam, the personification of America. My critique is that this performance is merely one episode in the continued decline of modern beauty in the West, especially here in America. And we should understand the roots of this problem. We should understand what beauty actually is, and we should fight this problem by reasserting standards of art and beauty and creativity that actually feed our minds, feed our spirits inspirational things, feed our spirits things that elevate our perceptions, as opposed to feeding us antagonism, feeding us gangsterism, and most importantly, feeding us the worst passions that humanity has to offer. So in this video, we'll be exploring that element of it. And I'll also be talking a little bit about the performance in light of these general truths, but we're going to focus more on the broader issue of the decline of modern beauty. Before we get into that, my friends, hope all of you are doing well. I'm Christian Mark. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy political and social commentary with a philosophical bent, then I must implore you, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you can, my friends, to ensure that our channel is successful. We are close to 20,000 subscribers. I believe we have a very special project going on here. There are very few channels that are like us. There are very few channels that do the mission that we do here on this channel. So if you want to help support me, you can like, share, comment, subscribe. If you want to go to the extra mile, you can do it as well. It's always nice. Thank you guys so much. Now, please enjoy the video. So, as I mentioned, this halftime performance has been panned as one of the worst in modern history for various reasons. Particularly, a lot of people complain that they could not understand the words that the rapper who was doing the performance, Kendrick Lamar, was saying. Other folks said it was rather improper to sing some of the songs he sung because those songs were bringing in a few that he has with another rapper, which I'm not even going to talk about the few because it makes no sense. It's nonsense, really. But it brought that feud to an audience of people that have absolutely no idea what the feud was. Other critiques have been that the performance particularly was only for a particular audience, and the Super Bowl should be for everyone and should have more generational and general appeal, so on and so forth. When I saw it, and by the way, I only watched that because I don't really watch sports. I only watched the halftime performance because I do believe those are cultural moments that we can understand and learn from and deduce certain principles and truths from. When I saw it, I thought to myself, this is what mass society, this is what many people in the masses want and believe is actually good art. And this, in effect, shows the decline of modern art. In fact, I thought to myself, this show substantiates that art, real art which reflects higher ideas, which is inspired by the order of reality, which inspires man to refine himself and achieve greatness, that's no longer coveted in mass. Antagonism, gangsterism, subjectivism, expressionism, all these different isms, which I'm going to explain in a moment, and good beats are put above and prided over ideas that move the mind. Things that move the heart these days are prided over ideas that move the mind. And there is a room for what I would call things that move the heart, part of the sensitive nature of man. There's a room for that, and that's actually quite important. But when dealing with the sensitive nature of men, when dealing with our emotions and our passions and our tastes, all of which are constituent elements of that sensitive nature, we must ensure that we have good tastes that feed passions towards their proper ends and that also help us refine our senses, our emotional senses. And I think this performance reflected that we definitely, as in mass society, not everybody in mass society, have fallen from that particular standard. But before I can discuss that intelligently, we must first ask ourselves the question of what beauty is, as I just used it, and how does it relate to art and more generally to music, which is a form of art. And so beauty, my friends, is a principle that reflects the harmony, the order, and the regularity of a particular concept. So when you say that something is beautiful, when we say that that tree is beautiful, what we mean is that that tree has a particular set of characteristics that harmonize with each other, that are orderly in a sense, that are orderly in the sense that they cohere with how trees should be. And most importantly, beyond just being harmonious and orderly, these characteristics give us an impression that is elevated, that is high about that particular thing, that makes us wonder, that elevates our senses towards a higher realm of thinking. It goes beyond the mere cold rational and goes more towards the imaginative, goes more towards the expressive. That's when we say something is beautiful, that's roughly what we mean. Now, the thing is, a lot of people will then say, well, Christian, isn't beauty subjective? And if beauty is subjective and art is merely a result of beauty, isn't art subjective? Not quite. A lot of people actually are not precise when they're saying this exact thing. How we perceive beauty, how the mind perceives beauty, differs for every single person. However, the principles that make up the concept of beauty are rather universal. And any idea of beauty that is solely based on subjective perceptions cannot be intelligible beyond that particular person. In fact, if words were just solely based upon subjective perceptions, meaning would be impossible, because meaning implies something that is general and, most importantly, external, that is beyond your own experience. This is not what we call a solipsism in philosophy. This is not a world that is engineered and dominated by your mind. This is a world of many things that also have principles and general truths that guide it, that we must conform to in order to live coherently and also in order to live good as well, in order to live good moral lives. And so the perception of beauty can be subjective, but the principle and its constituent elements most certainly are not subjective. There are forms of beauty that we can identify characteristics of and that we can deduce certain principles from. And so there are three kinds of beauty, roughly. There's more, but I'm going to use three for the purposes of our video. There's artistic beauty, conceptual beauty, and relative beauty. Relative beauty is just what I explained, how we perceive something that is beautiful. So, for example, some people may think that a Volkswagen is a beautiful car, while others may think that a Lincoln is a beautiful car. Well, these are a matter of perception. This is relative beauty. This is just purely relative beauty. Although relative beauty and physical beauty are connected. Now, that's the fourth category I should probably add, is in physical beauty. Physical beauty is a thing that I mentioned before that coheres with its nature, conforms rather to its proper order and shape, and is harmonizing with itself. So a beautiful car would be a car that has the capacity, number one, to move, locomotion, and has all four wheels, or however many wheels that particular car has, and also has windows and the ability to function properly as a car. A car without an engine is not necessarily a beautiful car, because a core part of its function, locomotion, which makes the car important, is taken away. So a beautiful car is that which has all of its parts and coheres with its parts. But the relative beauty mind would say, okay, a car that has all of its parts is fine, but I like a particular kind of car because that jives more with my perceptions. That's relative beauty. Conceptual beauty. Conceptual beauty is when you take a non-physical thing and that itself harmonizes with what it's supposed to be. That harmonizes with its own nature. So, for example, mathematics. If you look at a mathematical theorem, the Pythagorean theorem, for example, you could say that it is beautiful despite having no physical counterparts, because it harmonizes with all of its parts and it produces an output if you follow the theorem correctly. There is a connection between physical and conceptual beauty because we tend to assign conceptual significance to physical objects. So, for example, Jack and Jill may be husband and wife, but Jack and Jill, in terms of physical approximation, may just be two people who cohabitate with each other. Husband and wife is a conceptual idea. It is a product of conceptual beauty, so on and so forth. Friendship is a product of conceptual beauty. Two humans who talk are just two humans who talk, who interact, if you're looking at it purely physical. Conceptually, the concept is known as friendship. It's known as a product of sociability, man's capacity to be social. That's conceptual beauty. Artistic beauty is when, again, the mind creates an impression, whether it be a physical impression, whether it be a conceptual impression, whether it be even a relative impression, that elevates the mind to a particular level by harmonizing a concept in its proper condition. So when you look at for example, the Hagia Sophia, that beautiful monument of art, you think about, oh my gosh, look at all of these decorations, look at the form therein, look at the patterns, the arrangements. When you think about the Starry Night painting, for example, that just reflects the utter sublimity of the universe that we can only see from a grounded standpoint. At least at that time, you only see from a grounded standpoint by looking up with our perception. So the beauty there is the beauty of not only the universe and sublime, but it's also the beauty of the human ability to perceive and understand. These are things, all these categories of beauty, unite the perceptions by elevating them towards a certain level that produces a certain impression that is positive within us and makes us wonder and brings us closer to the sublime. The sublime is that principle by which our mind tries to comprehend, but it cannot due to its sheer majesty. The universe, life itself, consciousness, God, these are the sublime, and beauty ought to be a vehicle to get us towards the sublime. So, if we've established that beauty is this harmonious, orderly thing that can apply to different concepts, we have to also understand how it can impact us. As I mentioned, it elevates our perceptions. And the different products of beauty, rather, can also lower our perceptions and therefore impact our states of being. So a state of being and a condition of being are actually quite different. A state of being is how one feels in a particular moment. I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm depressed. A condition of being is what somebody is. I am a male. I am bright. I am creative. I am whatever you want to say about yourself. I'm just spitballing examples. That's a condition of being. A state of being could come up with a condition of being if persistent enough through habit. If you cultivate a certain habit, you will eventually, at least in some way, shape, or form, become the habits you're doing. That is the difference between a state of being and condition of being. So if beauty feeds our perceptions things that can elevate them, they can most certainly then elevate our states of being, how we feel temporarily. But if our minds are transfixed on the idea of beauty and our actions conform to that kind of harmonious, orderly behavior, not only can beauty impact our states of being, it can integrate into our condition of being. Beauty can become that which helps us understand what is proper in terms of character, what is proper in terms of human relationships, what is proper in terms of the virtues we should be pursuing in society. So there's actually a moral component to aesthetics, even though aesthetics and morality are separate. So, Christian, why are you going through this big philosophical diatribe? Many of you may be asking right now. What does that do with Kendrick Lamar and Drake? I want to hear about all that. I understand. The point is this. If we're going to see how beauty has declined, we must first understand what it is. And if we're going to see what a negation of beauty must be, we must understand what the presence of beauty most certainly is. These days, beauty is completely sacrificed for shock value and expressionism that makes absolutely no sense, that has no order, no harmony to it. It's just there. When a piece of art can be considered a banana duct taped to a wall, which a New York artist actually did, and a millionaire bought that for $6.5 million and then ate the piece of art, supposedly, then you clearly have a person whose idea of beauty and aesthetics is not one of order and harmony, but it's instead one of sheer expression and desire, of desires that are informed by rather bad taste and temporary passions. When you have, for example, toilets being used as an example of arts, a toilet being one of the sort of most lowest objects in human society that processes our biological functions, and that's somehow art. How does that elevate your mind? It doesn't. How does that go towards an order or harmony of something that goes beyond? It doesn't. Again, it's just an example of crude expression and passion unguided by higher ideas. It does not refine man. It does not push us towards enlightenment. It does not spark a fire in the soul of a man, which brings forth imagination. It's just crude in there. When beauty is no longer the metric by which art is created, but instead expressionism and bucking the system or even making a social statement is the mechanism and the reason by which art is created, then art will only be as good as the times allow it to be. Timeless art goes towards the common nature of man, which influences how we interact with art and beauty, which is why I'm talking about order and harmony, because a wise human nature is that which is orderly and harmonious with itself. If my body was not orderly and harmonious with itself, it would not be able to speak, I would not be able to breathe, it would just completely fall apart. And so we can apply that to other things in life as well. Now on to music. So if beauty is this orderly and harmonious process, music can also be that as well, and most certainly it is. The fact that you have musical theory, you get melodies, you've got arrangements, you've got the way that sound should happen, you've got production, you got so many things in music that actually are ordered in a particular way to produce particular results. Music is actually, funnily enough, a science, which is one of the reasons why a lot of musicians in the past either used their voices as instruments, and they had to take voice training, because to train something means to make it conform to a particular set of things. Therefore, you're training your voice to conform to its best point could possibly be. Or they take instrument training where they learn to play guitar or piano, and all of those are already played a certain way as well, because everyone knows what an out of tune or a broken guitar sounds like. Everyone knows what a bad piano chord sounds like. So in general, music is also this sort of product of this harmonious arrangement. But when music instead becomes less about the harmony and the order, and more instead about the primal and the guttural parts of man, when it becomes a vehicle for antagonism, when it becomes a vehicle for gangsterism, when it is just replaced, the soul of the musical arrangement is replaced by computerized beats that move the heart and not the mind, what you have is not a product of beauty. What you have is a supreme product of ugliness, and that is what modern rap music is, and that is what that Super Bowl performance was. It was an example, an exemplification of utter ugliness. Oh, Christian, why are you getting so passionate on me? Because the decline of beauty comes with the decline of good sense. The decline of good sense comes with the decline of good taste. And the decline of good taste comes with the decline of creativity in society. How many people have you seen complain? Oh my gosh, since the 90s, we haven't created anything. This generation is not creative at all. We're just rehashing the 80s, rehashing the 50s. Why do you think this is? Because there's some kind of magical thing about the 50s and 60s and 90s? No, because the 90s and the 60s and the 50s had something that right now we don't have, and that is the willingness to explore, the willingness to test, the willingness to be experimental, and the willingness to innovate. That halftime show was instead embraced the opposite of all of those things. It embraced instead putting on a dispute, a beef between another rapper to millions of people who had no knowledge of the beef to speak towards a particular audience, as opposed to speaking towards the unifying spirit of the Super Bowl. It instead was necessarily about of trying to present some kind of defiant message against the critics. It was instead about most importantly, not trying to be orderly or harmonious and elevate the passions, but instead to bring them down to a point where people are aggressive, where they are antagonistic, and where their minds are bent instead of being bent on reason, instead of being bent on higher things, they're bent on revenge. The song Not Like Us that was performed at the Super Bowl is again just a song about antagonism. It's a song about fighting somebody. It's a song about bringing down someone, and the fact that bringing down your fellow man, which in the past, by the way, used to be the product of very destructive things, whether they be gun duels, whether they be smears or scandalous attacks that ruin someone's reputation in the public eye, whether they be all kind of things. When this becomes a genre for entertainment, we are now consuming vice, and we are praising vice for leisure. And when you praise vice for leisure, what does that do to your apprehension of virtue? How does that elevate your mind? How does that get you closer to the sublime? It most certainly doesn't. A lot of folks complain that they could not understand Kendrick Lamar, and that's actually on purpose because, again, the music is not meant to get you to think. It's meant to get you to feel. And a society of unwise feelings that are moved towards antagonism is not a society that can appreciate the true extent of beauty, and that is the crux of my critique here. You were not supposed to understand his words on purpose. I'm going to actually read to you a lyric from the song that was performed, just so I can, exemplify my point. So he says in the song, "Mustard on that beat," which is a very odd way to begin a song. I don't even know what that means. "Debo, any rap N-word, he's a free throw. Man down, call the amber lamps, tell him to breathe. nail an N-word to the cross, and he walk around like a Tizo. Okay, so he's just insulting people. He's just bringing them down. He's talking about doing all kind of things to them. How many ops do you've got? I'm going to pass on this body. I'm John Stockton. I'm going to beat your ass and hide the Bible if God is watching. Sometimes you got to pop up and show N-words, certified bully men, all these kind of nasty things. How does this get you closer to the sublime? And some of you may be laughing right now, but this is not funny to me. This is actually rather concerning, because this is what the modern idea of beauty is. Or rather, this is a reflection of how a lot of people see the modern idea of beauty. And some people, I saw Clifton Duncan on Twitter and other people on Twitter, personalities say, oh, well, you guys just don't understand culture. Conservatives are such prudes and stick in the muds. Because we want to actually have something that inspires us, because we want to actually have something that elevates us, because we actually want to pay attention to how harmony and order interact with human perception, because we want to actually demand good things of our creators, because we want to actually have something that pushes us towards greatness and refinement, because we want to have enlightenment. That's now prudish. Again, a culture of low expectations can only produce products that are of low quality. I'll say it again. A culture of low expectations can only produce products of low quality. And when you have had Super Bowl halftime shows like Prince's, where the imagery was beautiful, the song was beautiful, Purple Rain, about desire and imagination and how those things bring you closer towards somebody. And then, of course, you had the purple Prince sign, which lit up in the rain. And then you had that chorus where he's singing at the end of the song. Those things elevate us. They provide positive impressions. They make us wonder. They make us think about progress, about the future, about humanity. They actually do something transformative within you. Mustard on that beat, A minor. What do these things do other than make us hate something, make us want to fight something, or make us take joy in the antagonisms of others? A society built on antagonism is not a society that can sustain itself. It's a society that is destined towards destruction. The Super Bowl halftime show was bad because it simply reflects the general standard and decline of beauty from instead of being a tool of harmony and order, being instead a foil for expressionism and subjectivism that has taken us away from the things that elevate our mind towards the sublime. That's why I reject it, and that's why, my friends, you should also reject it. My friends, like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can. My friends, study history, study philosophy. Remember, always, please stay pensive. Bye, guys.